As I got you, yeah, all my children, everything is gonna be alright. I know it will be alright. Oh, yeah.
Long as I got one more shoes. we remixing today.
Exactly.
Even though we are in the same house, you want to come sit with me? Get the chair.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
We got another special show for y'all. This is the month of February, and I am your host, Chuck. That's the other illustrious host, Zig.
What's up? And my partner in crime here.
Yes,
to be together again.
Hi, thank you.
Disclaimer for the show: we got kids.
We do.
We got kids. So we started this second season talking about love, and we definitely had a whole bunch of stuff that we weren't able to finish. And so last time we talked, we really just talked about love and communication. And again, the thought being that there's a lot to relationships. So we tried to bring it down to a couple core issues. So love, communication, finances, sex, and what's the last one?
Religion.
How it's funny. When we got married, the pastor said when he was doing a little sand thing, I think that's like a little popular thing to do. He goes, when somebody shouted out as we were pouring the sand, "Save room for Jesus," because you got the three sands that you put in there. So get your fancy chair. So this is Charles' chair, actually. That's an inside joke there. So with that being said, we want to kind of round out this conversation, finish this up, hopefully shed some light on what it is for our relationships, and maybe even testify a little bit. Candace shared an amazing testimony this week about her marriage life.
Yes,
her marriage.
To simplify it in the most basic way possible. Yeah.
So it's gonna be a nice show. So thank you for joining. Before we move along, we'd like for you to like, subscribe, share. So we out here doing this. We got to figure out the sponsorship though.
Looking for sponsors.
For sponsors.
Let us know.
Right, exactly. We represent. This was not planned, by the way.
It wasn't.
So
it's just a brand.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we'd like to invite the Holy Spirit into this place. Kind of Heavenly Father, please be with us, be with our relationships, be with the relationship of those who are watching. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. So I think we had we actually had some comments and some questions from the last show that we weren't able to get to. Did you, by chance,
remember them?
Remember them? Put them down.
Those are we can look those up though. We can try to find those.
So we'll get to those. So the first step is as we move through this, we actually had a little piece of news. So I don't know. We want to talk real quick about this is not the last day, Black History is
Sunday
tomorrow, right?
Yes.
And so, there's a lot of things to kind of celebrate. And I think, I guess I just wanted to do like a summary of Black History Month. This year seemed kind of different. What do you think?
I definitely feel like people were more aware this month all over my Facebook feed. And as you saw, lots of people posting different ideas about what they were doing for Black History Month, different people, and their history and what they have done for Black History Month. And I'm talking about deep. It wasn't just sharing, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. They were sharing so many different people that I had never heard of, and things of that nature. So that hit differently. And I just think people were more purposeful. And I say people, not just Black people, but also, people of all different races. I know I had a friend who was like, I want to help educate. And it was like, and she was like, Black History Month is not just about, Martin Luther King and things like that. It was about reading. It's about, educating yourself on, Black people and the struggle and how you can help. And I just thought that was so awesome and so amazing.
I think Black History was a little different for me this month because now I have a school-age child. And so I was a little more invested than I normally would be, I would say. And so we got a text message from a parent whose child goes to the same school ours did that kind of said, hey, it's Black History Month. I can't carry this load. Make sure you ask some questions. And so I did my due diligence and sent the teacher some resources that I thought would be appropriate for the class and never asked any more questions about it. And I was pleased one day when Zoe said, hey, do you know George Washington Carver did this? I was like, okay, Adventist education. So, it was different for me that way. I think on the complete other side, it was different in a capitalistic way. This isn't necessarily in such a good way. And we kind of talked about this in our ladies chat, but you can buy Black History Month swag everywhere. Michael's has Kente, craft projects, the Gap and Old Navy have Black History Month shirts. And while it would be nice to rep the culture from any mainstream place, we kind of wondered where are those funds going, because we want to be intentional about making sure our funds go back into supporting our community.
Yeah, definitely.
Y'all Black people ain't ever happy.
It definitely hit. I think it's just the Black culture in general over the last year has hit differently. I feel like as a people, we've been kind of made more aware of things. And there definitely was like some stuff that I think I would have glossed over and before, but now I'm like, if I see something related to Black history, I'm paying extra attention. And then so we were watching, there's that series on Netflix that Will Smith has just put out. And within the first, it's called the 14th Amendment. I think something like that.
I was just called Men.
Or Men, yeah. But he started with the 14th, and I didn't even finish it. But the fact that the first 20 minutes, and I think we had to run and do something, I'm glued to the screen, yo, this is dope. So going how they went in on how Frederick Douglass essentially was the mastermind behind the end of the Civil War. That was crazy. He was basically the original Professor X in this.
Yeah, man. It's pretty dope information that's being shared, and I think that's a good thing. What up, D Rich? He's definitely one of the proponents of sharing such dope information. Black Adventist pastor that's woke. And I see you in the comments, Michelle. Only one of your classes, I think CJ was the same. They didn't really cover it as much, but we made him do a Black history person every day of the month.
Yeah, so every day I made him write 2 paragraphs.
Made him.
Yeah, yes. The first paragraph was about the person and their life, and the second paragraph was how it affected him. What changes this made for him? How did this make him a better person by reading about this person? And it was so funny because like the first like week, like he was doing it and everything ended with, they were strong and they're going to help me to be strong. And like at the end of the second week, I was like, okay, yes, but what else? You know, like you got to get
carbon copy.
Exactly. I was like, you got to get deeper. And like even toward the end, he started doing it on his own, and he started picking his own people, which I thought was great. And he picked some people I never would have, things of his interest. So he picked like the first Black samurai, the first Black wrestler. And then like toward the end, we started looking at younger people, and he started like really loving the fact that 10-year-olds, were making big strides, and he thought that was great. So I thought that was a really good thing for him to do. And toward the end, he really enjoyed it.
Yes, you're right. He was going to learn it till he loves it. Yes. But we also we try to pick people that he would be interested in, like people who the guy who created the first video game cartridge, the lady that created the first security system, stuff that was in technology. It's definitely lacking, I think, in the school system, but we have to kind of supplement it, as necessary.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Which I think is crazy because there's been a lot of stuff in the news about schools actually, limiting the amount of Black history that can be done in the school settings. I just read an article yesterday about a teacher who resigned because the school said she couldn't do any more Black history information, and so it was kind of like they was like, we gave you your 28 days. That's all you get. Fun fact: that lady was white, and so she was like, this is crazy. And then you look at the history aspect of the struggle, and even like another thing my daughter asked me this week was, she was like, Daddy, did you know segregation was about separating people? And I was like, how about that, right? But then you fast forward to, not even fast forward, but in contrast to what's happening in the real world, they being a lot of these states that contested the election are passing laws to segregate people and make it harder for them to vote. So like Georgia they're trying to pass a law, something so petty. They said they don't want people passing out water and food if you in line to vote.
Wow.
And they're gonna make it a crime.
Wow.
Like so they're basically like, they like that shouldn't happen. Other states are starting to get rid of their mail-in voting, and so voter suppression is real. And I think it's interesting that it's like so much of it started to happen during February, and it's kind of like, wow, this is, and again, like a month after the insurrection, it's kind of like they were like, yeah, that happened, but let's see if we can make it happen again.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the things that are happening, I mean, I'm seeing in the comments, that's actually good that your daughter was able to talk to the VP in your school to perhaps get some change, in the school district, have that conversation. I thought it was also interesting that the Pathfinders, they had to do a Black history,
American
history honor.
Yeah, so that's I think that's a good thing to do within the church, because I don't think in the church we always get to see the heritage from that aspect and be able to celebrate Black history within the church. So it would be interesting to see how many of our white brothers and sisters also have that patch. So.
But actually, it's funny because even just with that patch specifically, the Master Guide candidates have to earn like a heritage honor, and it's not the African American heritage honor. It's supposed to be the Adventist heritage honor. And our conference has kind of said, listen, if you have to do a heritage honor, it can be an ethnic heritage honor, so it can be the Hispanic, Latinx Heritage Honor or the African American Heritage Honor to represent the people in our conference.
I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. It's pretty dope. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you guys have been doing for Black History Month. What you're sad about with Black History Month, ending.
Right.
But guess
I'm definitely making the commitment.
It was Black History is every day.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I was about to say. I was like, I'm gonna make sure we make the commitment to make sure it. And again, Black history is American history.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the thing. Again, it's kind of like when will we get there? But it's like when people recognize like it's all American. How long?
Right. That goes to the point of the question being asked, why do we have to have Black History Month? It's like because it's still an elective.
Right.
Otherwise, y'all wouldn't learn.
Which is also like the perfect discussion related to like, is it all lives matter or Black lives matter? It was like, okay, is it Black history or American history? Right. So when we get to American history, then maybe we can start saying yes, all lives matter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I teach a class at U of M, and it's a class I love. So it's Afrocentric principles and working with families and individuals. Mm-hmm. So I'm a social worker, and so it's like, how do you work with Black people, basically? And as part of our course, we kind of throw out a question every week on social media. And our last class, the question we threw out was, do we still need Black History Month? And ultimately the answer was yes, for the obvious reasons. But a lot of people said, first of all, the fact that we're asking this question is traumatic. Should we even be having this conversation in February? Let's just start there. But one person said, ultimately, until we are teaching in full accuracy and breadth and depth of American history, then yes, we absolutely do need Black History Month. We don't even teach the full story of what happened in American history. And so we erase the reality of so many people in this country. And until we can stop doing that, we need Black History Month.
Yeah.
Boom.
Sad but true.
So yes, all Black lives matter. Absolutely.
I like that.
All right,
put that on a shirt.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So let's get started with our conversation. Again, we've already gone through communication. We've gone through love. I mean, technically, it's all about love, right? Mm-hmm. So we I guess we gotta have a choice, right? Because it's not really scripted. So we didn't really talk about finances, right? I pulled an audible. Shout out! I'm making a reference to Charles.
Oh, I was like,
I mean, and I had kids on the list, but in the app, like when I was going through the thing yesterday, I put reconciliation on there instead of kids, and then that was not. Look at this! How y'all talking in code through the camera?
Because we besties.
Exactly.
We don't need to exchange words.
Oh, goodness gracious. Man.
For now.
You hating because Charles don't speak that language?
Exactly. I don't have that.
Listen, we'll get there one day. Definitely Fonte was mad at us in the comments. Asking us, why are y'all gonna answer my question? Yeah. When we were talking about spirituality. So yeah, we'll talk about spirituality. And then PB&J, aka sex. Peanut butter and jelly.
We're gonna accomplish all of that today.
Maybe. I think the easiest one to tackle is finances. So the question we can start out is who is the spender?
Me.
Why? Why you do that?
Why you spend money?
Why do you do that?
Because there are things that we need. And because there are things that we need, they need to be purchased. Let me give you an example. So one of Purnell's issues with my spending is that if we talk about something, I'm just going to go do it. And so sometimes he'll be like, that doesn't mean we do this right now. Like we need this, but not right now. It's not a priority right now. Mm-hmm. So I know something that's about to come up. So I bought some winter gloves. I bought some winter gloves for myself and for Purnell. It's going to be 47 degrees today, and obviously we don't need these winter gloves this winter. But where did that winter glove purchase come? This is a confession. Why did I purchase these winter gloves? Well, last weekend there was a lot of snow. He went outside. He was outside with the kids. His hands were freezing. He came inside. He said, hey, I realized I need real winter gloves to do this. I said, man, the last time I went out with the kids in the winter, I had to leave them outside and come inside because my hands were freezing. And so because we were both having the issue, I went and bought the winter gloves. Was it a necessity? No, I can own that. No, it wasn't a necessity, but the spending was coming from a good place. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately,
it always comes from a good
prioritize
place.
things differently.
My wallet's a great.
See, we talked about having a connection. Did you see that? Did you see that? First of all, we here.
Right.
And then when you start talking about money, we are absolutely there. We are absolutely there.
Yeah,
so,
I hear you, but
why you do it, Lovely?
So I'm going to tell you, I do it for the same reasons, because I don't think that Charles is always fully aware of what we need. He's aware when we don't have it, but he's not necessarily aware sometimes when we need it. So like the kids, like their clothes they're growing out of their clothes. And so I'll just go, I'll say, hey, the kids need clothes. And he's like, oh, okay. And like you, Candace, I'll go get the clothes. I'll come back with clothes that I got on sale for great prices, mind you.
Great.
And he'll just be like, why'd you buy these clothes? I don't understand why you bought these clothes. But at the same time, he'll go upstairs and be like, oh, Izzy don't have no clothes to wear that fit. And I'm like, oh, the clothes I bought downstairs, those fit because she needed clothes. Or like he'll go in the pantry and he'll be like, oh, I don't have no snacks. And I'm like, well, I didn't get a chance to get to the store. Or like he'll go and find a snack he likes. And he's like, oh, thanks for getting this. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't think about that. You know what I'm saying? But then he'll look in the budget. He's like, why'd you go spend all this money? So you can have those snacks. Okay, that's why.
So listen, I think part of this is
I notice all the women are feeling
actually
right now.
Yes, we ain't trying to hear that. We ain't trying to hear that. So
comment.
Do you remember our first argument about money? Of course you do. So
was it me buying fruit?
Yep. So
I love this.
So we were on a very tight budget, right? We had just got married, so we broke, right? We not in debt, but we was absolutely broke. So we did not charge our wedding. We paid for cash, but we need to like replenish our savings and pay some bills. Mm-hmm. And so as we were going through, it's like, all right, here's our budget. We got this much money for this much money for this much money for this. And I say, hey, let's and I remember distinctively saying like, hey, instead of like doing a whole grocery shopping spree, let's just get groceries for the next couple of days and then we'll go shopping. And I was like, hey, just pick up $50. I said, go to the store and get $50 worth of groceries. Just, here's your budget, $50. It's like 4 days worth of food or something like that, right?
I think you're slightly exaggerating, but continue.
No.
Okay.
No.
I didn't spend $50 on 4 days of food.
Listen,
they didn't have kids.
Oh yeah, they didn't have kids. That's right.
We didn't have kids, right? So it's just me and her. So I was like, and at the time we were still eating meat. So it was like, eat a pack of chicken.
Yeah.
Right?
Do that. Maybe.
And so she come back with all these groceries. And I was like, and in my mind, I was like, yo, like, was there a sale? Like, where did all this food come from? Like, what is this? And I'm like, it's bananas and oranges. And then I was like, I was like, why did you buy all this fruit? And she said, I always grew up having fruit in the house. And I was like, you could have got fruit in a can. And so she was like, I was like, if you needed fruit that badly, you could have got some fruit in the can.
I don't know what that means. That doesn't.
She's like, I don't eat fruit out of the can.
But it was definitely one of the things where we was definitely not on the same page. I was like, no.
Do you have any of those moments?
I think that story is an example of like the spender versus saver mentality, where it's like, I saw Frank eat canned fruit. That sounds great. Say,
hey, listen, when you poor,
right? What's the definition of a need? And I think the benefit of marriage is that there is opportunity to grow your budget, to increase in some ways But I think as a saver in the marriage, you're trying to save and you're trying to make sure that you're staying afloat, and more than just staying afloat, right? You're trying to have extra cushion, but just like we're trying to have extra cushion, I think the spender is trying to have an extra nice lifestyle. Like there's just different stuff where it's like you talk about need, it's like, oh, we got sheets, and then it's like, yeah, but you don't have these Egyptian cotton sheets,
right?
And yes, I enjoy laying on it. You're like, oh, this is nice, but then I'm like,
right? She'd be like, don't you like them sheets? Don't you like it?
And I'm like, yeah, like, oh, how much did it cost? So like, what were the regular cotton sheets?
You know, here's what I always
Quality of life.
Yes. So I love you right before.
It'd be like death by 1,000 cuts, though.
So here's the thing. I love you. Don't get mad at me. When you said quality of life, that definitely touched a nerve for me, because his quality of life is a little different from mine. I remember before when we first got married, before we had gotten our own apartment and place to live, before we had moved together, he was like, I need to save. And I was like, okay. He's like, I need to save. I'm gonna get some furniture for the house, so when you come, you have furniture and everything like that. And I was like, I bet, that's great. This man was living alone. He would come home from work, because we would video chat every night. He'd come home from work, sitting in the dark. Every night he'd eat a salad and some nuggets.
Why you gotta put me on blast?
I love you because you're amazing. I'm about to clean it up. He would eat salad and nuggets. Lights would be off. Like we literally be videoing, and it's getting darker and darker outside. I'm like, you gonna turn the light on? He's like, nah, we good. And so I was just like, how are you living like this? But when I moved, after we got married and I moved in, guess what? We had a bedroom set. We had a car, we had a couch, we had furniture, we had everything. And it was because he knew how to tamper down
the budget.
That budget.
To what was needed.
Yes, he knew how to do that. Whereas once I came, money was out there. I was like, we need pillows. He's like, what?
For the couch, not for the bed. For the couch. I'm like, what?
Listen, I can't, I think men in general will be like, necessity really means necessity. So it's like, I remember, even in grad school, it took me, I don't even know, it took me maybe a year to get a bed. I'm like, it's just me.
Exactly, me and Candace the same.
I mean, I found the cheapest apartment I could find, and
it's not in the hood. It's like next to the hood. It's like
no. This was in. I was in the hood in Pilsen in Chicago. And that's like the Spanish hood. So I was like the only black person on the street. I was like, but the rent was like $300 a month. And I don't even know if it was I think it was like $285 to be honest. And the building was owned by a slumlord. You could barely make it up the steps. You had to for real hold on to the wall. You couldn't grab the rail because the rail would have made you fall. Listen. And so and I think men bring that into their relationships. It's kind of like we only need the necessity. Like why are you getting all of that other stuff? We only, and I think it's part of the compliment of, so I think really finances for the most part, whether you're a spender or a saver, is really about how do you complement each other? Because there might be times where we absolutely need it, A, B, and C. Or you have that conversation, you go, no, we really didn't need that right now, or we don't need to do that right now. Or we were just going through, our son's stuff, and I was like, man, he's growing really quick. We need to probably start buying some pants. Mm-hmm. She immediately picked up her phone and I'm like, whoa. Not right now.
I didn't buy anything. I was scouting.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. And it's true. I see in the comments Trey talking about he had a air mattress bed. That was the same way before I got married, an air mattress bed. And I do remember Frank only had 4 ottomans. He didn't have actual furniture. He literally had ottomans. That was it. It wasn't a couch. It was just ottomans.
Hey, but it was the bare necessities.
That's right. Bare necessities. I think as you're saying, when it comes to being married, though, you're bringing both these different, styles of finances. That's often attributed on how you grew up and what was how did it impact you, and what was kind of the
y'all
effect
had
that it
seen
had.
Her face.
Right.
Sorry, it was her face. She made the sound and made the face like, oh gosh, y'all gonna get me? No.
Shh. Sweetie, go upstairs and play.
Yes, please.
Go.
Go
Go,
ahead.
TJ. Go. We have a guest audience, a live audience member.
Right.
But yeah, so when it comes to your marriage, you're bringing in kind of that financial baggage. It's important to unpack it, to work it out, see what you should be taking into your marriage and what you shouldn't be bringing into your marriage financially. I mean, for us, once we communicated, and for me, the budget was king, right? I couldn't always get like, I only want you to spend $200 on groceries for the month. Like for her, that wasn't realistic. That was like a non-starter. But it was like, once we decided on our number for, you know, our family size, there's a kid down.
Sorry.
That's our live audience member on the way out. Couldn't quite make it, but once we decided on that, that's when things started to work more smoothly, where we were able to not have these arguments or misunderstandings about, hey, I thought you weren't going to spend that, or I thought we were saving. Where it's like, no, this is our budget, this is our money. And I think what worked for us is that we just had one bucket of money. I know for some couples, that's not how they roll. Some couples have like your money, my money, and then there's like this little Venn diagram of this is our money.
We're like,
right, where they happen to overtake.
That's interesting to me too. I want to know in the comments how many people do things that way. I know we do. It's just one bucket. Do y'all do that?
Yes.
Yeah, we
just
just
one bucket. So yeah, so for people who do, and I think when we did our marriage counseling, you know, that was part of the question, right? So how are you going to manage your money? And then after he asked the question, one of the comments he said is when your money is separate, it just makes it that much easier to separate. And I thought about it and I was like, it's true, right? Because there's really no enmeshing, right? And so it's like, where is the joining? And some people do 2 buckets, some people do 3 buckets, right? We know a famous couple.
Yours, mine, and ours.
Oh.
Yep. Where it's kind of like, oh, we have a shared account where we just put money in, and that's where all the bills come out. And I have my account and he has his account.
See, like this budget thing, this money thing was very different. I remember that was one of our.
You did want to have 2 buckets.
Yes, so that was one of our issues when we first.
Our bucket and her bucket.
Yeah.
I wanted 2 buckets, and when we talk about, you know, where that's coming from, when I grew up, my mom would always tell me, you need to have your own. And she's like, you always need to have your own. She's like, so when we got married, I said, okay, I want my own bucket. And so I remember Charles was like, we're gonna have to talk this out because that can't be a thing for us. And I was just like, no, I need my own, because I always felt pressured when I wanted to buy like my own stuff. I always felt, well, and it wasn't even on him. I always was like, why I gotta tell you every single thing? And it wasn't that I had to tell him every single thing, but he's like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's discuss it. And also I'm more loose with money. So I think it did help, because I'll be like, ooh, I like that. That's $100. Let me look in the budget. Okay, we've paid our bills. There's $100. I'm gonna go buy this thing for $100. And he'd be like, what happened to the $100? And I'm like, well, you know, we paid our bills. We had our money. We have our money for food. I can buy this. And he's like, don't you think we should talk about that first? And sometimes it's not. And the thing is, it's not always like a no, you like not even like a no, you can't.
Like, no, I don't agree.
Or no, I don't agree.
Yeah.
But it's just like, let's just know what we're both doing together with this money thing.
And I think that worked. And I think that's the communication part is a big key. We talked about communication, and with finances, it's the same way, whether it's 1 bucket or 3 buckets. As long as you guys are communicating how you're going to spend the money for your family, then I don't think there's a wrong wrong way to do it, unless you're not communicating, unless you're finding yourself
right.
in debt and finding yourself at odds about finances. Because I think I saw in the comments, having a shared account drove you crazy. I can see that. Because initially we had problems where she was like it was almost like double spending. Whereas like I'm about to swipe and I'm like, wait, there's nothing to swipe. Like, and so it was like that type of communication where it's like, oh, and then I think some of the other side effects are like getting gifts and like, some of the smaller stuff where it's like, I'm like looking, I'm like, hey, what's this, from Best Buy? And she's like, happy birthday.
3 months early, like, why you all up in the business?
I'm like, why are you getting this from Xbox? She was like, okay. So it's like, you have like blackout periods where you tell the other person you can't look at the accounts for this long. But
so like holidays and birthdays, it's like, don't look at the accounts. And then it's like, okay.
But from our side, the cars, intention, or at least
what's happening with buying cars? No one was buying cars.
Right. I mean, he's a mechanic. That makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
She's talking about her husband.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that. Weeda, I can see that.
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, like you said, as the theme through all of these things, no matter what, is always going to be communication, no matter what we're talking about in a relationship. And where there absolutely is a wrong way to do it. And I think whether it's 1 bucket, 2 buckets, 3 buckets, 4, is if like somebody is controlling in the relationship, right? Yeah. Because there is such a thing as financial abuse. Mm-hmm. And when a partner in their relationship, and it's one thing to have disputes and arguments, and I think those things happen, but when a person is almost like beholden to the rules and regulations, made to feel bad, and like literally can't do anything without kind of like permission, right? And again, it was one thing to disagree. It's one thing to have disputes and arguments, and those things will probably happen. But in the event that, the person is trapped in that situation, it becomes more troubling, right? And that is definitely a wrong way to do it. I've actually had an experience like that before myself, not in this relationship, where it was kind of like, it was we were doing the 2 bucket thing, where money was going into a savings account, and then when the relationship ended, it was kind of like, all right, well, let me get my cut. And she was like, what money? And I was just like, yeah. And and then, referencing it definitely was kind of like, oh, like, yo, that was a really sideways situation.
Yeah. And for me, that's why, like, even when, we had the dispute about going from 2 buckets to 1 bucket, my honest reasoning was like, because we're together, like everything is mine. I mean, everything is yours. Like, not everything that's mine is yours. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And so it was like the accounts, whatever finances, you have the passwords, like you have the accounts. Cause like you hear crazy stories where like they had a shared bucket and this lady like she took like $30,000 to pay off her student loans. And the dude was like, that's not what we talked about. And it's like, you have those, I think those are some of the, like you said, those extreme or abuse cases where people they're still taking the principle of not communicating and applying it, wrong, no matter what type of money situation they're having. It comes back to how are you working together and how are you growing? For us, like, we're trying to grow financially and we're reading books, not necessarily together, but, sharing information together, talking about, savings or investment or retirement. You have to grow to the next level as a couple so that you keep evolving, even financially. So
absolutely. And I remember a conversation we had during one of our, and it wasn't like an argument, but it was definitely a dispute. And I was like, well, maybe you just want to have your own money.
Candace said that was
I was like, let's separate the account. And I was like, so we had always operated from one bucket. And I was like, all right, well, let's just go to 2 buckets. So she was like, are you serious? And she was like, no, that's not going to work.
She's like, yeah, leave me.
And ever since then, like, I feel like it's definitely improved. But sometimes it's still like a death by 1,000 cuts. Be like, I didn't spend a lot of money. I spent $3 here. I'm like, but you spent $3 here, $3 here, $3 here, $3 here, $3 here, $3 here. And she'll be like, oh, yeah, I did that.
Well, when you put it together like that.
Right. So yeah. So let us know in the comments, what your situation is. Hopefully we're not putting too many people out there like, how come we ain't got 1 bucket? And
I think we should also preface everything that we're saying. Well, I think we probably already did though. Was just to say, do, as long as you're not, abusing someone, do what works best for your relationship. If it is 3 buckets, then do the 3 buckets. Just make sure that you are communicating. That's the base of it. And
that's the key, right? So you can reconcile any situation in that money thing if you communicate and make sure that you reach an understanding.
Yes.
So our next topic, religion, spirituality. Sister.
Where's Fonte?
Well, I know where Fonte at now.
Young cows.
Answer me. So I guess the easy question is kind of like who do you think is the most spiritual person in a relationship?
I like that comment. Sorry, on the last topic.
This man right here.
Which one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of.
We've had a $20 rule. We've had a $10 rule. It kind of depends on what the financial.
Right. Right. It's kind of like, and right now the rules kind of lax. But here, I think going back to what we talked about initially was I was like, listen,
this guy,
I was
like, Pastor don't want to live off his bucket.
You're like, no, please don't send me to my bucket. But I think part of the one of the interesting things about this is I've told her, like, listen, you can have you can have whatever budget you want if you allow me to pay off all the bills, right? I was like, let's go to a 0 budget and just pay off all the bills. And I'm like, you can have whatever you like. And guess what? She couldn't do it.
I need concrete. We had like we have 3 months with 0 spending, don't spend any money. And I did it. And it didn't feel good. It wasn't great.
I was gonna say, I remember you doing it.
But I was able to do it. So I can't have like, right. So I can't have like, okay, don't spend any money for the next 12 months while we're debt free. Like I need something a little smaller than that. That's more achievable. Smart goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic.
Yes.
Okay, Sister Yancy.
Yes. 0 budget for the next 6 months, and you go buy food. Why'd you buy food? What? Like, y'all do that? Like, no.
But when it comes to spirituality,
right?
Spirituality.
We don't have such restrictions.
You're right. I think that Charles is the more spiritual one in our relationship. I don't think it's me.
Yeah, I think I was. What about y'all two? What did you? I didn't hear your answer. Who?
I think we trade off, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's definitely moments where I'm like, damn, I'm like really impressed. Mm-hmm. Like she'll be doing like a devotion. I'm like, what are you reading? She'll be like, I'm doing my devotion. I'm like, devotion? When'd you start a devotion?
I definitely.
And it's like, I'm like, man, I'll be feeling kind of bad. Like, man, I'm so.
Yes. Oh,
there are times when he'll be like talking. He's talking about like, biblical stuff. I'm like, when did you get all of that biblical knowledge? Like, and why didn't you share it with me? Why?
It's worse when I hop into bed because I'm tired. I look over, he's down there kneeling and praying. I'm like, oh shoot, let me slide out. Let me slide out. I'm there and pray.
Yeah, but I think that's what's kind of dope as a couple is when you have someone that does have a spiritual life,
Mm-hmm.
they help you maintain your spiritual life as well. Because it's like, oh man, like she's about to go to heaven without me. Like, what is happening? Like, I hope you pray for me. And it's I think it's important to make sure that you're encouraging your partner. Now I know some couples, they have worship by themselves, and then they have worship as a couple, and then if they have a family, they have worship as a family.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that daily. I know people who do that daily.
Yes.
We don't do that daily. I think ideally we should, but
we tried.
We did it for a time period.
Exactly.
But I think individually we do our own spiritual, things as we can. But with the kids, especially with Pathfinders and with adventurers, I think that helps to facilitate and help us, focus as a family. Of course, you open Sabbath and close Sabbath and have stuff, especially with COVID, right? There's not a lot of kids. Shout out to the children's ministry.
Yes.
Streaming today at 4:30 or 4 p.m.
4:30.
Okay. They're coming this afternoon. But outside of that little time frame, there's not a whole bunch. And you don't want your kids necessarily watching VeggieTales for 24 hours or whatever.
But they will.
They will. But, it helped us. It gave us the opportunity to really, as a family, have worship on Sabbaths and make sure that we're intentional of doing something with them, whether it's, a Bible story book or the felt board. We have the little felt pieces.
Yeah, and they do their Bible stories for us.
Yeah. The other thing I know, definitely praying together is something we don't always do a lot of. We definitely, like, if there's like specific things, which is why I'm like super grateful for our kids, because it's few and far between where we have situations where we don't all pray together. And the kids will actually, like, if it's like super late and they got to go to bed, and I'm like, listen, y'all just need to get into bed. Like, say your own prayer, get in bed. Like, they'll start crying because they're like, I didn't get to pray. And so, God bless them for, and again, like we barely missed a day where we hadn't prayed together as a family, like every day. And so I think that's really, really important. The worship part, which I separate from prayer, we don't always do. And again, I appreciate Candace because during this COVID thing, like the worship in the house like kicked up, and it was like kids was on a schedule. It was like wake up, eat, worship, and then the kids would be like, I didn't get worship today, and it'd be like, y'all doing worship? Right. I was like, okay, all right, let's do it. It's like, and they'll come like, mommy, like, daddy, mommy didn't worship with us today. Can we have worship? Like, yes, we can have worship. Right. Bless you. So that's definitely been, I think the studying part, we definitely do separate. And that's definitely an area where we can definitely probably come together. Because I'm like one of those, y'all know, I guess if we was ever going to have a sponsor, especially from this side, it's going to be the Amplified Bible. And I love reading the Amplified Bible.
Yes, we know.
Because again, like, it's its own sermon, right? You can read it and be like, oh my God, did you see this? And I'll like run and be like, hey. But then again, it's kind of like that experience where then she'll be like, when did you start reading that? Like, where did that come from? Like, what made you do that? And I'm like, what you mean what made me do it? Like, I'm always doing it. And she'll be like, what?
It's two Franks.
Frank had a question. Do we pray about a problem between y'all out loud to God while praying together? Petty. They were like, please help Lovely not to spend no more money.
I think that we've done that like as a joke, but I don't think we've done it like seriously.
Yeah.
Because just to be honest, my mom used to do that to me when I was younger. I used to hate it so much. And she would pray for a long time about what you did and why you're disobedient. and how this is going to affect your life. And you sitting there mad because you can't comment in the middle of her prayer to the Lord. And then when she was done with her prayer, she'd be like, oh, now let's go have a wonderful day. And you sitting there steaming because you can't say nothing about the prayer to the Lord. It wasn't for you. So we don't do that. Do y'all?
I don't know. We don't do it. And I think if we're praying, if there's something going on, I'm definitely praying by myself. And I think that's usually my prayer too. I'm like, it's definitely a prayer. I'm by my. I need to get myself together before I say something crazy. And so, yeah, that's definitely me. Just saying.
And that looks like Candace does that in her silent prayers to God. She'll be like, man, for now.
I think with our kids, you know, God bless them. They pray for their own issues. Like when it's time for bed, Zach will be like, you know, dear Jesus, help me to have a good day tomorrow. Help me to listen and do what I'm supposed to and not pee on myself. like we don't have to.
Exactly. It's okay. It's okay.
Toddlers have accidents.
That's true.
Yo, it'd be killing me when he'd be like, dear Jesus, please help me take a nap.
So we prayed that last night.
You know what's interesting actually, so we have to talk about kids and their spiritual life. Sometimes I want, like, you ever have those moments when like your child says something to you, you know it was the Holy Spirit, it wasn't them? Because like sometimes like Danny will come up to me and she'll like hug me, and she'll like she may like see that I'm sad about something or whatever, and she'll come give me a hug and she's like, you know, Jesus loves you. And I'm just like, what? or like literally, like I think like last night she hugged me. She's like, I just wanted to let you know that I love you and that you should pray and talk to Jesus. And I was just like, like,
yeah, Zoe does that too. I remember there was a moment we were into it, like we was beefing, and I don't wear my feelings on my face, and so I'm like still playing with them and laughing and joking, and then Zoe goes, "Daddy, it's okay. You can stay in my room if you want to." And I was like, "What?" And she like gave me this hug, and I like melted, like, "Thank you."
Yeah, give you those hugs of love, and you're just like, I know this is not you in this moment, but
right?
Lord,
like I know you're going through something right now. It's like little kid translations, like I know you're going through something right now.
Yeah,
you know, if you ever need anything,
yeah, I'm
talk
here
to me.
for you.
You know what? We don't even have to talk. We can just lay there and look at the ceiling together, and everything will be okay. I just want you.
And then exactly, and then at some point they're gonna roll over and jump on your face, but it's okay. For 2 seconds, they will sit and be there for you.
Yep. And I think part of the thing too is, which is amazing. You know, if you hadn't seen Pastor Bartley's sermon from last night, check it out. Definitely powerful. Check him out again this morning at 11. It's already set to premiere. So you know what? If we go a little over, it's okay. Because you can just and also check out, shout out to Pastor D. Rich and the Journey Fellowship Church. They also have some series going on too, called Family Matters. We'll get the flyer up eventually. But you know what Pastor Bartley talked about yesterday, which was the concept of your calling and your purpose. Right? He talked about there's 3 points talking about you have to conceive, confess, and commit. Right. And it's the same thing in our relationships, right? We need to, because our relationship, I read something yesterday too that was saying that marriage isn't all about love, and it's not always going to be beautiful. But your marriage should also have a purpose. And the larger purpose is that the relationship reflects God. Right. And you know, I mean, the Bible says, right, for this reason shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave, leave and cleave, as they say. But that type of relationship should kind of echo what that spiritual experience. And I think it's interesting how telling it is when you see people in certain situations, you be like, man, like if they could just sprinkle a little bit more Jesus.
It's definitely true. Because I feel like when God is not as prominent as he should be in your relationship, you definitely struggle. And it can be really hard. Especially, I don't know. I'm not even gonna go there. But yes, it can be hard.
But I think we have some good comments here.
I mean, I've definitely prayed that prayer, like,
what?
Like, Lord, I can't fix it. I need you to fix it. Like, it's not good. I don't know what to do. Please help me. Help me, Jesus. Help me.
Yes, and I definitely think that prayer is necessary. The help me, Jesus, fix it. Like Frank said, like, do you pray together when you are upset with each other? I feel like at some point in our relationship, in the beginning of our relationship, we would, I think we tried it maybe a couple of times, but we to be fair though, we used to pray for something else that goes into the next topic. So remind me about that.
But I think for us, we would pray after, like once we calm down.
Once we calm
down. I think maybe individually we were praying for the other person, but I think kind of once we calmed down, there were definitely times when we prayed with each other about whatever we were, beefing about or arguing about.
Not recently.
But no.
No. For the most part, it's more like a prayer of thanksgiving.
If you want to talk to Jesus, you talk to Jesus on your
by
own.
yourself.
Right. I feel like, man, I was like, no, man, like I ain't trying to hold your hand right now.
Right.
No,
like, I can't do that.
Go over there.
I think that ideally is the path we should be taking, is to be praying together. I think to try. Yeah, I think that could help to maybe calm a situation. Again, we haven't done it in practice.
No, but ideally,
I think there's in the comments the spiritual connection. Yeah, I agree. Keeps you in the same book.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah. And I think part of that thing too is like when it comes to like expectations in the marriage, right? And so we have all these expectations, and I think that's what we put. The best relationships are not perfect, but where you model what you expect of the other person. And I think having a really, having a prayer life, a spiritual life in general, helps you to kind of remember like, oh, it's not about me. Because a lot of times you'll be thinking like, man, why can't she this and why can't she that? And then when you really reflect, it's kind of like, well, maybe I should do, and maybe I should do something different. And I definitely take the stance and believe that that you should definitely model what you want your other person to do. And so it's kind of, so if I'm saying I think we should be praying with the kids, and I'm not saying like, why didn't you pray with the kids? That kind of situation. Or even just like when we talk to each other. So it's kind of like, am I a person that snaps like, why are you talking to me like that? But then I'm talking to you a certain way. And so it's like, it just, again, those expectations are really important.
Let's keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But again, setting those guidelines. And again, it comes back to communication. Right. And so it's kind of like things that people feel comfortable about or comfortable with.
But I mean, that we talk about communication, but what happens when you communicate that's not what you want to do? When I communicate, hey, I don't want to have worship every day. Like it's not practical because of my schedule. I'm not trying to paint myself as the evil person in this relationship, but like, for example, if I'm like, I don't have time, I have this, and this. I do my spiritual thing in the morning, but I'm not trying to date worship with you as a couple. How do you work out that type of dispute?
I think in those situations, I think there are still ways to meet each other's needs, right? Because that's what really we should be trying to do. Because that's what Jesus did for us. Like, so the example of the marriage is that we kind of personify what the relationship with Jesus is supposed to be like. And so what did Jesus do? He met people's needs. And so your relationship should also be about meeting the other person's need. And so the fact that you don't want it, but the other person does, means you need to find a way to find some common ground. And so maybe it's not that it happens exactly the way you want it, but the fact that the other person needs it, you love dictates that you find a way to meet the need. And I think that's the real kind of religious aspect of it, for me at least.
Yeah. And I think that makes definite sense, because I want to even say, like, at some point, I think that we were like, we want to have worship together, but we didn't have time. So at some point we were like, we would, because we talk sometimes on like Messenger during the day when he's at work. And so we would talk about whatever we read. So if I read like something spiritual, I'd be like, hey, this is what I read today. And then he'd make like a comment or two on it, things like that. So I feel like it doesn't always have to be the way that you think it is, as long as you're willing to be open about the different options that are out there. You know what I mean? At least that's my thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's again, all of it, the most important thing in a relationship is always going to come back to communication. And so, but relationships are truly, like, again, the biggest impact that you can make on a person in a relationship is meeting their needs. And you can only do that through some form of communication. It's kind of, if you just kind of leave that person to themselves and do your own thing, and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. That was one of the issues that we had for a while, where I would be like, hey, Candace, like, I like A, B, and C. And she would do
D.
Right. And I'll be like, and in my mind at first it was like, well, I don't want to complain. I'm not going to say anything. Like she made an effort. But then it was like, I noticed it was like, I still kept coming back to you like, hey, I really would like A, B, and C. Like F. And I'm like, hey, A, B, and C is amazing. Oh, did you see this? And they'll be like, H. And I'll be like, and then it got to a point where it's like, why are you doing this? Like, like, what is this? Like, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, is she doing this on purpose? Like, it got to the point I'm like, is this and I really had to pray about it. And it really caused like a big fracture in our relationship, because it kind of goes back into like the love language thing, right? So it's kind of like, while these things are nice, they don't fill me up.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to like meeting a person's needs, it's really important. And oftentimes what we have to do in a relationship is get out of the way, right? And kind of humble yourself to be like, yeah, while I might not like this, it's not about me, right? So it's like, let me do something that's, and again, how you reconcile that ends up being, because I also don't think that people should do things that devalue them as a person. Or if you feel like if I have to change who I am to make this thing happen, then that becomes an issue. Like if you start to feel uncomfortable and like nasty, you're like, I can't do it.
I mean, ultimately, I think how I was able to resolve that, like to go back where we started with spirituality and the testimony that I gave this week at prayer meeting, my testimony was about having joy, because I can see, or I'm at a place in my life where I can see all of these things that were in chaos that are not in chaos. And so one of the things that was in chaos was our relationship. Our marriage was absolutely in chaos because I didn't know how to do that. There were a lot of things that were in the way. Purnell likes to talk about marriages as a 4-legged stool, and that stool, a 5-legged stool, the number keeps changing if I'm honest, but the stool includes sex and love and communication and finances and what did I miss?
Spirituality.
And God, spirituality. and so we talked, like recently we were talking about how our 5-legged stool was a ladder. Like there were all of these things that were lacking in our marriage, and ultimately it required God to get all of those pieces back to what they needed to be. And so in terms of, he's saying choosing your spouse every day, he would say like, do you wake up and just think about me and think about meeting my needs? I didn't know how to do that because I couldn't wake up in the morning and meet my own needs and make sure that I was okay emotionally and spiritually and all of those things. And so with God, because it really was God, I can now do all of those things. And so it's not something I need to be conscious about. Like, I'm going to wake up and choose Pernell this morning. Like, I don't need to think about it. That's just what it is, because I am whole. And because I am whole, I can pour into him.
Yeah. And I think that's where like I know for me, like the last part about like the spiritual aspect of a relationship, like two big things, right? Encouraging the other person and forgiving the other person. Right. All things that Jesus does, that we expect Jesus to forgive us. And yet in our relationships, we always don't do it. Like we kind of, we hold on the grudges and want to. We ain't run out of time, bro. Don't try to wrap me up, son.
You gotta wrap it up.
And so that's a huge thing. And I think you definitely had to work on some forgiveness tactics.
I hold on to things. I can own that. Like when we're done talking about something, like it's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean you're good? Like this just happened. Like we weren't cool like 3 seconds ago. I'm not cool. Like we can't sit down and watch a movie. Like I need to decompress. And so it took some time to learn that and to connect it back to spirituality. Like if we can't really receive that forgiveness that we have from Christ, like how can we give that to other people?
I mean, I feel you, Candace. I ain't there yet though. But I'm with you. I'm with you with we've talked about something, that situation is done, but I need some time to get my mind around that fact and to get my emotions, back in check and things like that. And I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to sit there and watch a movie with you right after. But here's the thing. It doesn't mean that I'm still like upset with like, I don't know, with him, with you specifically. It's more like, I now need to take the feelings that I had about it, figure out calm them down, figure out where to put them. I understand that we've talked about it. Situation is done, but I still personally need to figure out how to move those feelings around so that it's calmed down a little bit. So it may take me about an hour or so, calm down. Then we could maybe watch a movie after that.
And for me, I'm like, that's the point of talking about it, right? Let's talk about it so we can get it out, so we don't have to carry the feelings.
I can't do that.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely.
I'm surprised, Lovely.
No, that's the one thing I can't do.
So actually,
he does that.
Actually, for everyone that gets on me about I don't communicate feelings, when I'm upset, I communicate my feelings. I know how. Like you made me sad, angry.
You learned that over the course.
Yeah, because I wouldn't agree with that, bro. Like, no. I haven't. Well, I'm just saying I haven't experienced that yet.
Because I ain't married to you, fool.
I agree with that.
For her, like when we get into arguments, like I'm like, I get everything out, and then I'm like, I'm good. Like I've said my piece, and
it doesn't mean that it's over
for me,
but it means that he has said whatever it is. Like when he's in that mood to talk about it. Now that's the thing. When he wants to talk about it, then he will talk and be very clear on what happened. But it's more like when is he gonna want to talk about it?
That didn't happen when we were in Japan.
Exactly. And I'm different where as soon as the feelings rise, I'm like, let's talk about it right now. And then sometimes he's like, no. Or sometimes it's not great for me to talk about it.
Well, that's
so it's things like that.
I think it just moves, right?
It does move.
It's just depends. But I think that's the spirituality part, right? When you have that connection, with God, it helps the thought, right? You don't want to win an argument, right? You're just trying to diffuse it. And I think having God in it helps you keep focused on what's important. And the hope is that one of you will be listening to God so that you're able to keep everything afloat, right? Because everybody has bad days. Everybody has, moments where, it's like, nah, like I'm for real angry. Like, let's go out and like, we gonna do this. And it's like, the other person's like, nah, no, we're not. And it's like, and sometimes it's not so much of feelings avoidance, it's realizing, and that's why I had to understand for Lovely, she would sometimes like not say anything, and I'd be like, yo, why are we, you know, like I'm ready to go, and she's like, nah, like we gonna say some stuff that's gonna be mean, it's gonna be hurtful, and this is how she's talking to me, so it's making me feel like bad, like, well, yes, I was, but I needed to get that. But it's again because she was like in tune with God at that moment, that she's being able to see, like, you know, it's spiritual.
Because, you know, sometimes y'all just so mad, and it's like, let's talk about this right now. And sometimes I'd literally be like, no, we can't do that right now. And let's talk. And I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. Because I guarantee you, because I know me, I'm going to say some rude things. And I know you.
Yeah, you will.
Yes, you're going to say some rude things. And you can't take back what you say. You can say sorry about some things, but you can't take it back. The other person has already heard it. It is already in their head. And even if you say sorry, what they said still can affect you.
That's true.
Even if they apologize. So sometimes I think, at least for us, it's better to let's just take a beat, however long that is.
Take a moment, take a pause.
And then come back and talk about it and figure it out. It don't always work like that, but
it's the toothpaste, you know.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to
taste, you know, out of
you can't put it back in.
Can't put it back in. Those words, man.
You can't put it back in. And I think it's definitely important. I mean, I definitely have grown, and I grew a lot before I got into this relationship, because I remember a lot. There was a lot. This is all benefit for you, man. And so I remember there was a time where it's like, I'm gonna give exactly how I get it. And so and then it clicked, like, you know, there's no point in doing that, right? Because when you're arguing, and if you're yelling at your spouse, whatever point you're trying to make, it's not gonna go it's not gonna go across.
Even if you're right.
Yes, I'm saying it loud.
I have never experienced that version of Pernell. Like if he was to yell at me, like early in our marriage, I would have just started to cry and shut down. Like we had rules about what conflict looked like, what disagreement looked like. I don't remember all of the rules, but the rules I remembered was we don't yell, we don't raise our voices, and we don't leave. Like those were things that were really important, because we wanted to make sure that we fight fair, right? We're not bringing up stuff from the past. We're focusing on whatever the issue is at the time. Because it's always going to come back to communication. You need to know your spouse. And because you know yourselves and each other, you need to have rules for what you're going to do when things aren't good, because things aren't always going to be good. And so we aren't necessarily like, we don't yell, but he's going to talk. He's going to keep talking. And I am more quiet. I won't even say I'm more introspective, because I'm not. He's the introspective one, but I'm the more quiet one. And so the more quiet I am, the more he talks. And so in a moment, he's the one who wants to have a conversation right then. And I need time for my thoughts to settle. I need time to kind of figure out what's what, so I can have an intelligible conversation with you, because otherwise you're going to get upset that I'm not talking. And you're going to be like, well, what are you thinking? I need you to say something. And I'm like, I'm singing to him, because I haven't processed all of this information. And so you need to know your partner.
Yeah. And I remember it really comes down to that, like knowing your partner and knowing that they are your partner. And I think that's like the period of like, no, like they're not your enemy. They're out here trying to, and I think that's the whole thing too. The other point was like encourage you and elevate you. I should be looking to build you up, and you should be looking to build me up. And if we have that in mind, when you go into a situation that's an argument, whatever happened, if you kind of enter with the thought that I know they didn't do this to hurt me on purpose, then you can probably do a better job of getting out of the situation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And then and I think and so as we're kind of coming to a close,
No,
sorry.
We ran out of time. We only got to.
Well, since Lovely brought it up,
the
best thing.
We don't have time.
I want to say this about sex, right?
So here's the thing, right? So I'll say this, right?
We don't have time.
Well, listen, I actually made it brief. because I knew you was gonna say do
Wait,
something.
hang on. Before we move on, this is a line segment, man.
Oh, what?
Line segment. I don't know if y'all can see that. Look at this.
Bro, we can't see that.
Look at this. There's you, Lovely, and then there's me, right, on this side, and there's God in the middle.
This is diagram.
Yeah.
Diagrams.
For all my diagram folks, the point is I can't get closer to you without God, and you can't get closer to me without God. God's in the middle of it all. As Sister Weta said, God's in the
Listen,
middle.
I want you to put that on the shirt, bro. I want you to tape it to your shirt. I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this segment. We're gonna put a highlight and play it on the home screen on your cell phone when you open it every time. And you know what's interesting too, and here's my quick and easy segment about sex, right? We done talked about communication, all this other stuff, right? If you can do all these other things and do them effectively and do them good, the sex will be so much better. Right? You have an argument, and if you're working on the same page, and you as long as everything's okay, listen. The best part about getting me, sometimes I'll be like, we about to argue, like and then I'll be like, we about to make up. And so the answer, quick and easy, sex, yes, have it. Have lots of it. It's good for your marriage. It's like a vitamin. One of my favorite pastors, Pastor Willis, God rest his soul, would always say, sex is like the glue in your marriage. You know, so you need it. And then the other part of it too is God is a romantic. He wants to be intimate with us. And so therefore you should be intimate with your partner. And if you go down the route of wanting to conceive children, plan. I think you can absolutely plan, and you can plan before you get pregnant, and you can plan during the pregnancy. And so talk about what your expectations are, whether your expectations about sex, children. But again, it comes back to communication. But
that conversation should happen before you're in a marriage.
It should.
It definitely should, if possible. I'm going to say this. I know people are going to be like, what? But we did it, and it was awesome. I remember in the beginning of our marriage.
You did what? We ain't trying to talk about that.
In the beginning of our marriage, I don't know. Do you remember we used to pray about our sex life?
Yes.
Like in the beginning of the marriage, we used to specifically pray that we would have a good time. And the Lord would answer those prayers. And I know I know, and it's so weird to say, but I think that when we talk about spirituality, sex is part of it. And I feel like you should be able to pray about your sex life to God. And if you can't, I think that's a problem. And I'm not saying that y'all should, be kneeling down right before every single time, but I do think that you should be able to pray or to talk to God about your sex life and be real with God and ask for what you want. And I do think that God cares about our sex lives and will help in whatever areas, he needs to help with.
Is God in your bedroom?
Hello.
Yeah, well,
I think he should.
But I think we don't do a good job as Christians to show the tie-in, like with Songs of Solomon, right? I mean, that was a romantic
love song.
Very.
Right.
Have you ever blushed reading Songs of Solomon? I know I have. You read it, you like, okay.
Yeah, like it's definitely a part of it. Right.
Sweet cinnamon.
Yeah,
exactly. Like your navel is like a goblet I should drink out of.
Right.
What?
Yeah. And
yes.
It's not something that we tend to keep, within our relationship with God. We try to separate and isolate it, but God's the center of everything, including our sex life.
And again, like he wants to be intimate with us and to have that intimate relationship. And
definitely. Okay. I want to say two things though. Number one, if you have not listened to the Bible Experience and have Denzel and his wife read that to you, I promise you they'll start reading. You sitting there like, is this the Bible? Should I be listening to your private messages? So if you haven't listened, listen to it. And I will also say this. I think that you need to definitely talk and communicate and like ask the other person what they like, what they don't like, what works for them. I know for Charles and I, when we would drive back and forth to my in-laws, we would always have, and we still do, we always have a conversation. And we literally call it our sex conversation. And sometimes I bring it up like in the beginning of the trip. We 5 minutes in, I'm like, let's talk about it.
I was like,
and
she got some things to say out
exactly, exactly. And he's like, the kids are still awake in the back. We gotta wait until they sleep,
like,
and then we can talk. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. But we, on those trips, we talk about everything, from what you like, what you don't like, what you want to bring in, what you don't want to bring in, and it gets into those deep things. And I feel like you should be able to talk to your spouse about those things and to listen and do those things so that both of you can be happy in your sex life, and so that you can bring God in and have him help make that whole thing work out for you. That's what I was saying.
Absolutely. Amen.
I agree that I don't think we do a good job in the church of talking about sex and addressing sex, because I know coming into our marriage, like, I didn't want to talk about sex. Like, I didn't know how to do that. I had never done that. I'd never been given like a model for that. And so Pernell would be like, let's talk about it. And I'm like, hee.
Right.
So I think we're now in a place where we can have those conversations. And I wish we'd been having those conversations the whole 10 years of our marriage.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about and so the moral of the story is communicate
and have God
and love each other,
right?
I mean, but that's how it, right? Communicate, and
that includes God.
Yeah, that includes God too. And I think part of that, if you put God at the top of your communication chain,
exactly,
then everything will, for whatever, sometimes it just feels like it just falls into place, right? So whether you're talking about communication between your partner, if you're talking about your finances, if you're talking about, sex, if you're talking about, money, whatever it is, your children.
Yeah, all the Bible talks
everything,
about all
right?
That, right?
All
God wants us to be the lender, not the borrower. And talks about everything. I agree, man. You got to have God in the center. And I think, like you said, the next one after God is communication. Wait a minute, I'll leave y'all talking about
pastor, man.
Yeah. So
you didn't miss anything. It's all together as one.
All together.
It's all together.
The summary is communicate with God, and your relationship, man, you'd be surprised. And I think the way it can flourish and grow. And I think one of the conversations that we've had is kind of like, do you want your, none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect, right? Only God is perfect. The idea about being perfect means to be unchanged. God is the only thing that's unchanged. And you have to think, even in your relationship right now, no matter how good it is, would you want it to never change from this spot? It's like, no, so because we should celebrate in the fact that we aren't perfect, because every day can be better. And so, so if you haven't, take this opportunity, pray with your spouse, communicate a little bit better, talk a little bit better about your finances, talk a little bit better about your kids, talk about your sex life, and you'll be better for it.
And I think on the flip side, if your partner isn't willing to talk about those things, I know that's a difficult spot to be in. For me, the thing that I know is that when I'm the difficult spouse in the relationship, the thing that's helped is lovely being patient. And I know we didn't talk about reconciliation and all those things, but I think when things aren't going well, right, it's great when you both can communicate. But when the other person's like, nah, like, what do you do in those situations? And I think Lovely's always been a good example in those situations when I'm just like, nah, I don't want to. She takes a deep breath and she's like, okay. And she prays for me. She's patient. She tries to wiggle her way when I'm just like, no. And she's like, well, maybe. And I think that you have to have those uncomfortable moments with your spouse so that you can grow, so that when you're being difficult, when you're not willing to change, when you're not willing to grow, it's unfair, but it puts that additional, I would say, responsibility on the other spouse to try to help get you there. And it's not always like pushing you like out, hard outside your comfort zone, but it's that willingness to, okay, we'll try again tomorrow. Okay, we'll try again tomorrow. And it's like a patience with you. It's like like I said, we're a partner. So even though you were having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, I ain't going nowhere. And that's what I always tell you, I ain't going nowhere. So it's like we need a couple days to be beefing and to cool off. That's fine. I'm here, and I'm here to support. And she's always been like that.
I actually think that that's really interesting that you say that too, because it's just like you said, like when your spouse, when you are not like in that moment, in that mood, even though we have been talking about communication and things like that, we have to also, I think, realize that marriage is meaningful, but if you love that person and if you're talking to God and communicating, at least with God, I think it will help you find your way back in your marriage. And marriage is not always going to be perfect. Clearly, you are going to struggle, even if you follow all of the rules and the things that we're saying. Clearly, you guys have had struggles. We have struggles. And doesn't mean that marriage is going to be perfect after this. It just means that even in its imperfect moments, you know that you will come out of those imperfect moments better. You know that you are growing, and like Charles said, you know that y'all are here to stay. So if we're going to stay in this moment and be uncomfortable, we're going to do it together. When we grow out of this uncomfortable moment, we're going to do it together. And I feel like if you have that as your basis, then I do think that even in the hard times, you can look backwards and see where you were great and where you could be. And then you can also look forward and be able to see where you can get back to.
Absolutely.
And where you can go to.
And
these are tools. They're tools in your toolbox to use.
Absolutely. And then I know one of the things that we definitely talked a lot about and communicated a lot about in our relationship was conflict, right? So going back to reconciliation, conflict in your relationship doesn't have to always be a bad thing. Yeah. And you can come out of it better, right? And so it's an amazing experience to have an issue, and then when you address it appropriately, when you come out better as a relationship on the other side, like that's an amazing experience. But I think you have to also know that some conflict is good, because it's kind of like the hard grime and dirt in your relationship. But like that song says, you need a little bit of dirt to grow, right? And so without it, your relationship might turn out stale, or is that thing you never address. And so not addressing it can sometimes be worse for your relationship than dealing with it. And then as always, this would be the last thing I say about it, but as always, if you can't get through any of these things that we talked about, maybe you should see a counselor, right? So definitely bias, and maybe you should see one, maybe your partner should see one, maybe you both should see one together. And again, it goes back to encouraging your partner as well. I think that there are definitely times where sometimes you need to see a counselor just to get a checkup. Right? It's like, it doesn't mean we got to go through years and years of therapy, but maybe you go in for a couple sessions to work on something, get some new skills, and then return
bring
back
them to your marriage. Bring them into your life.
I definitely agree.
Ultimately for me, I think it kind of boils down to the idea that marriage isn't for the faint of heart. Marriage is work. Like,
I don't agree with that.
Marriage, you don't.
It's an investment.
Okay. Potato.
Talk about that,
I mean, ultimately, what I'm saying is you have to invest into it. You have to actively be doing things in order for it to thrive and to grow. You have to make a commitment to it so that when things aren't good, right? We say for better or for worse, and don't think about what that means. Worse is going to happen. When that worse happens, what are you doing? What do you have to sustain you? If you were just in a marriage because they looked good or because you loved them and it's not based on a solid foundation, that's going to fall away. And what are you going to have then? And so you have to be willing to do that with eyes wide open going into a marriage.
I definitely agree with that. And I think that sometimes we take our vows lightly when we first say them. I feel like sometimes when you first get married, you're so high. Usually you're high on the love and the good feelings, and we're about to get married and be together forever. And you say, you know, till death do us part, good and bad. You're just super excited about it. And then you get into the marriage and you realize, oh, this is what bad really means. And not only this is what bad really means, but this is what bad feels like. And I think both of those go hand in hand, because that can change the way that, you know, you think about things. But I feel like if we're going into marriage with counseling, you know, listening to the people around you who tell you, you know, if this person may seem good for you or not, things like that. If we listen to those things and then you come into the marriage, you know, with some tools and things like that, I think that you can grow your marriage and become better as individuals and as a couple.
Not to relay the point, but I saw a post in the Wakanda group about Kim and Kanye basically talking about, you know, should we look down on someone who's getting divorced, was kind of the sense of it, someone who's getting divorced as a result of mental illness. And I mean, it's not for me to judge what someone else is doing in their own relationship. Every relationship is different. We need to stop comparing our relationships to other people. We need to ultimately know what a healthy relationship is and strive for that within our own relationship.
Amen. Amen.
And on that note, time to wrap it up. It's been a great show. We are over, way over. We thank you for staying with us so long, but we don't want y'all to miss out on church.
I'm so glad the church is on demand, so you ain't missed nothing. So once you finish up here, go ahead, head over to Pontiac page or the Pastor Ron's page, or even on YouTube. So Pastor Bartley is finishing up his series. I forget what he titled it.
It's a part of the February Live series. That's
February Live, right? It's the last February Live session. So go ahead and check it out.
We at church.
I like that.
Right. We are the church.
We are at church now.
Yeah. So that being said,
don't fear the bad news.
Keep your heart and mind focused.
And
always trust in the Lord.
Come on, Candace.
I will trust.
Oh, you're join in on that?
I will trust.
Okay. And.
All right. And we are two Christian couples.
Wow. Okay.
And we out.
Bye.
Peace.
Peace.